All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're not just looking at AI as some cool new piece of technology. No, we're doing a deep financial and macroeconomic analysis of the massive systemic disruptions it's causing. We're talking about a whole new economic architecture that is, right now, fundamentally rewriting the rules of capital, of risk, and of value itself.
Anonymity will become a luxury. Now, at first glance, that might sound like just a social prediction, maybe something you'd read in a philosophy book, but it's not. This is a cold, hard financial forecast. It's predicting the rise of an entirely new premium asset class. And it's the perfect window into how the changes we're about to unpack are going to ripple through every single corner of our economy. So let's break down how we get there.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the foundation, this new economic architecture. Then we'll dive into the real-world impact on three huge sectors: mobility and insurance, health and longevity, and finally, agriculture and assets. And once we've seen how the dominoes fall, we're going to zoom all the way out to understand the massive economic paradox this creates for every single one of us.
Okay, first up, the new architecture. We have to really get our heads around this core idea. AI is shifting from being just a tool, something we use like a spreadsheet or an app, to becoming the invisible fabric of the reality we all inhabit. And that changes everything about how markets work.
For centuries, economics has basically been the science of scarcity. How do we allocate limited resources? That's been the whole game. Well, that era is coming to a close. We are moving headfirst into an economy that is defined not by managing scarcity, but by managing complexity and abundance. And for capital markets, this is a profound inversion. The main challenge isn't about finding scarce goods anymore. It's about navigating and pulling value out of an overwhelming flood of data, of hyper-efficiency, and, this is a big one, of newly freed-up human time.
So, let's see this in action. We'll start with mobility and insurance. This is where that abstract idea of abundance really crashes into the real world, and it all starts with the end of ownership as we know it.
The key concept here is something called mobility as a service, or MaaS for short. Think about it. The entire idea of owning a car, this huge, expensive, depreciating asset that just sits there 95% of the time, is about to become totally obsolete. Instead, we're all going to access mobility through subscriptions, basically paying by the mile or by the kilometer. And right here, you see the complete rewiring of the financial model. For the car companies, this is a monumental shift. They're moving away from these volatile, capital-intensive sales, what investors call CapEx, all that money poured into factories and equipment, and they're moving toward predictable, stable, recurring revenue. I mean, this is the holy grail for Wall Street, turning lumpy, uncertain hardware sales into a smooth, subscription-based cash flow machine.
Now, the macro effect of this is just staggering. When you combine fully autonomous vehicles with automated last-mile delivery, think drones and robots, a primary cost for almost every single business on the planet, transportation, gets virtually eliminated. This unleashes a massive structural deflationary shock across the entire economy, completely transforming the profit margins for the whole retail and e-commerce world.
But this new architecture isn't just re-engineering our cities and supply chains, it's literally re-engineering our own biology. And as a result, the financial models that are built around our biology are being torn apart. The health and insurance sectors are staring down a disruption that hits them at their absolute core.
The whole paradigm is flipping from being reactive to being predictive. It's hyper-personalized. We're talking about technologies like digital twins, virtual models of your own body that can simulate how a drug will affect you before you ever take a pill. We're talking about invisible sensors in your home that are constantly analyzing the air for biometric markers that can predict diseases like cancer or Alzheimer's years before symptoms show up. And we're talking about autonomous robotic surgery with sub-millimeter precision that no human hand could ever hope to match. So for the insurance industry, this is an existential event. I mean, their entire business model is built on one thing: pricing risk, the statistical probability that something bad is going to happen. But what happens to that model when you can accurately predict and even prevent catastrophic illness long before it strikes? Well, the traditional basis for calculating risk premiums gets completely and fundamentally destroyed. And here's the crucial point. The shock wave is huge. This isn't just about health insurance. With far fewer deaths from things like medical errors and car accidents, and with a population that's living significantly longer, the multi-trillion-dollar pension and life insurance industries are facing what you can only call an actuarial rupture.
They will be forced to completely rewrite their models from scratch to figure out how to manage capital for a population that lives way, way longer than their current charts could ever predict.
Okay, our third deep dive takes us down to the farm, to agriculture and assets. And what we find here is this incredible clash between extreme precision and extreme risk.
We are stepping into an era of extreme precision agriculture. I want you to picture crewless, autonomous farms where tractors and drones are optimizing water and fertilizer not just by the field, but on a plant-by-plant basis. At the exact same time, AI is rapidly accelerating the design of lab-grown proteins that are becoming truly indistinguishable from animal meat. It's all about radically minimizing the inputs to get the absolute maximum output.
But this incredible efficiency brings us to a critical risk for investors, something known as stranded assets. It's a financial term for assets that just suddenly and prematurely lose almost all of their value. And the prime example here? The gigantic, capital-intensive infrastructure of the traditional livestock industry, which is facing obsolescence from low-cost, low-impact cultured proteins that are about to hit the market at scale. So for investors, especially those in commodity markets or ESG-focused funds, the mandate is crystal clear, and it is urgent. Aggressive portfolio rebalancing is required right now to avoid getting caught holding the bag on a traditional industry that is on the verge of losing its entire competitive advantage. The whole map of agricultural assets is literally being redrawn as we speak. So let's zoom out. Let's pull the camera all the way back. When you put all these disruptions together in mobility, in health, in agriculture, you arrive at a fundamental paradox for the global economy. We're modeling a world where the costs of essentials are collapsing, but the very foundation of our labor market, the way people earn money, might be crumbling right along with them.
In this right here lays the core tension bare. On one side of the ledger, what do we gain? We gain time as automation frees us up, we gain longevity with fewer preventable deaths, and we gain abundance with lower costs for energy, food, and transport. But look at the other side. What do we lose? We lose privacy, because this AI needs to know everything about us. We lose manual skills, and, critically, we risk losing labor purpose. From a purely economic view, that last one is the most dangerous, because it threatens to collapse aggregate consumer demand.
You have to ask the question, if automation severs that historic link between working and earning an income for a huge chunk of the population, how do people buy anything? Suddenly, financial analysts and policymakers have to start seriously modeling some really radical new fiscal scenarios. We're talking about things like robot taxes on automated labor or different forms of universal basic income, not for social reasons, but simply to keep the economic engine of consumption from seizing up.
And this brings us full circle, right back to that quote we started with. In a world where AI's power and utility depend on knowing us intimately, the ability to opt out, to simply be anonymous, becomes the ultimate scarce resource. And in economics, scarcity creates value. Privacy is transitioning from being a right to being a premium, high-value asset, which in turn is creating enormous, incredibly lucrative new markets for cybersecurity, data sovereignty, and digital isolation services.
So we'll leave you with this. The greatest challenge that this new architecture of abundance presents isn't technological. It's not even really financial. It's a deeply social and philosophical question about purpose. When the economy no longer needs our muscle or our driving skills or even our memory, how do we, as a society, redefine human value? That is the question that's going to define the next 100 years.